Fox Wi-Fi.
Stand by, guys.
This meeting is being live streamed, just popped up.
Fox Wi-Fi.
Stand by, guys.
My video go out.
This meeting is being live streamed, just popped up.
Hold on. Ay.
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Wi-Fi.
Stand by, guys.
Yep.
Video go out.
This meeting is being live streamed, just popped up.
Oh, you know what? Let me stop this one right here. Ay.
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Stand by, guys.
Yep. Video go out. This meeting is being live streamed, just popped up.
Oh, you know what? Let me stop this one right here. Ay.
Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube.
Stand by, guys.
Yep. Video go out.
Feels like Days of Future Past.
A little bit, yeah.
Let me stop this one right here. Ay.
I'm just watching Alice here in the center box.
Stand by, guys.
Feels like Days of Future Past.
A little bit, yeah.
You gotta love the technical issues. You gotta love it. You gotta love it.
See, this is I was listening to the seventh rule, and they were talking about O'Brien never really being happy. You know, this is why O'Brien is never really happy, because he gets too many visits from Murphy. And they were talking about O'Brien never really being happy.
Plus, he has Brian in his name,
Why
so it's kind of
O'Brien
like,
is never really
part of the
happy,
deal.
because he gets too many visits.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We got you.
Okay.
Too many visits from Murphy.
All right. Gotta come up with this real quick. Okay. So now, you gotta love this. Sorry, guys, give me 1 second. Everyone, we're going to start in a few minutes. Just like anything else, we always have little technical issues, and it's the life that we lead and all that good stuff. And
It's Murphy, man. You knew he was coming. He's an uninvited guest, but he always shows up. Hate that guy.
Okay, hold on. Just telling the audience to switch over to here. Okay. Hold on.
Oh, it's a new one.
To this link. Link.
It's
One more time. Okay. And the audience will pick up on us and everything else. So, hey everyone. It's always something, man. I try to get this right, and for whatever reason, it wanted to do its own thing. Well, that's just how the ball rolls. Okay. We wanted to say, hey everyone, thank you all for joining us. We started a little bit late. Technical issues comes with the territory. Welcome to What Does Avery Brooks Mean to Us? In celebration of the Sisko Day. Want to give a shout out to the Seventh Rule, Sirach Lofton, Ryan T. Huss, Melissa Largo, for allowing us to be able to be a part of this celebration. I'm one of the major hosts of this event for What Does Avery Brooks Mean to Us? Eric Moran. For those who don't know, basically pro wrestler, actor, producer, I've done it all under a nutshell, just having so much fun, cosplayer, all these things. But the most important thing is being able to be a part of someone who holds a special place in my heart, not just as a father, not just as an actor, but as someone who's professional and who basically respects this man on the highest level possible. And that's Avery Brooks. Along with me, I have my wife, Adia Moran, who is also an educator, cosplayer, and everything else under the sun. Adia, can you tell the audience more about yourself?
Well, hello, everyone. I think you pretty much covered everything. I am, as Eric mentioned, I am a cosplayer, an educator. I am a script supervisor, and I work under Together Brother Productions with my husband, Eric, when we produce fanfic episodes for different series that we work on throughout the years. And I'm so happy to be here to talk about our guy, Avery Brooks, today. There's so much to tell. Let's see if we can get squeezed into this hour.
Yes, yes. There's going to be so much celebration going on after our event. We want you all to continue tuning in to the Seventh Rule because they have even more events going on for the Sisko Day. Along with myself, we have this lovely young lady who is, to me, wise before her time. I love talking with her. When I was like asking about putting a panel together, a good friend of ours was like, I said, I'm doing it about Dion, about Avery Brooks. And she was like, Dion, you want to go to Dion. So I'm like, okay, I couldn't ask for anybody better to join us. And welcome aboard, Dion. Tell the audience about yourself and everything, please.
Well, first of all, I have to quote Khan, Noonien Singh. I cannot help but be touched. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, my name is Dion Stallworth. I'm one of the old school activists after Stonewall for trans and queer rights. I have a sci-fi group called The Lightning Lair. It's kind of a tribute to Black Lightning. Let's see, I go to cons. I don't do cosplay, but I love doing it. I love seeing all the people there. Basically a housewife, and I probably lived around Avery's time, so we have a similar frame of reference in terms of history. We both have lived a lot of history. Trust me on that.
All right. So next up, we have another good friend of mine who basically, he and I were friends for quite some time, and we finally got a chance to hang out during DNI Con. And again, great guy. John, welcome to the crew. Tell the audience about you and everything that you do.
Appreciate that, Smoke. DNI Con was the first time that you and I got a chance to meet in person after, being Facebook buddies for a couple of years. So that was amazing. That was a fantastic event, and the Gays in Space to put that on. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have had a chance to meet you and do the awesome stuff that we did in Philly here a few weeks ago. Outside of that, I own a game shop, Kazon Cards and Games, and through that route, it put me into connection with JG Hertzler, who I refer to as Pops because he pretty much like adopted me. And through him, he connected me to the wider Star Trek audience, and behind the scenes with a lot of the casts. He took me to Vegas, which is where I got to meet Aaron, and many others. And it's just been kind of a whirlwind for the past few years. After Aaron passed, we formed a fan club in his honor, the USS Aaron Eisenberg. So we've been doing that for it's the end of 2019, I believe, is when we kicked that off. And we've done a lot with that. We do work with Kitty and Armin and Jonathan Frakes with the pancreatic cancer as part of Team Trek. And other than that, it's like I said, it's been a bit of a whirlwind. So we try to do what we can. We got to meet Rico a number of years back, and him and I have gotten a chance to hang out and do some things. And Philly was a big one. So I'm here for the ride. Star Trek was my life, and hopefully it stays that way for the rest of it.
Sounds great. Thank you for joining us, John. Next up, we have one of my partners in crime for our podcast show, my co-host, fellow writer. This guy is amazing. I'm going to let him tell more about him to the audience. We got my boy, Brian Civic Minded Lessig. What's going on, Brian?
Thank you, Eric. I think you've said it all. I can't help but to notice you left out 5-time karaoke champion from my resume there. I'm a little disappointed, but no, it's great to be on. This was really cool. The timing couldn't be better because just a real quick background. I've always been a Star Trek fan, loved it. When I was in junior high, that's right around the time that Deep Space Nine was coming out, and I was a big Next Generation fan. And I started to get into it. I went to college. I kind of broke off from it. And then just recently, I really started like re-binging the entire series. And I can't wait to talk about this because what you get out of that show when you're a teenager is way different than what you get out of it when you're pushing 50 years old. So it's really exciting for me. I'm a big fan of Avery's work and the whole crew, all things Trek. So yeah, this is really exciting. Thanks for having me on, everyone.
Next up, I have this gentleman here who's an outstanding friend of mine, Anna Diaz. We go back for almost well over 20 years. Naming all the things he's done, it wouldn't be proper. I think it's only best for him to tell the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, my good friend, Mark B. Lee. Mark, what's going on, buddy?
Oh, buddy. How you doing, man? How are you?
Great.
Hey, I have a complaint. So with all of us in these boxes right here, I'm looking at all the comments on the YouTube channel real quick. And I Google the Brady Bunch boxes. And I just want you to understand that I am in Marsha's box right now. So I'm not really happy about that since eventually she gets a big nose and everything. Brian is, well, since we don't have a bottom one here, he's who was the one that always said Marsha?
Jan.
Jan. Brian's Jan. John, you're Alice. Rico is Peter. Your lovely wife here is Greg, and Dion is the dad. So what's up with that, man?
Hell no.
Anyway, not to hold this any longer.
And you know what? That's a good looking family too.
That is.
So myself.
We rock. I love it. Talk about D&I again, right? I'm Mark, and I still hold on to this moniker because it's because I did it, not that I'm currently doing it now. But I'm an international convention host. I used to do 2 conventions a year in Germany for 20 years. That was a lot of fun. I am one of the pro moderators for Dragon Con, as well as a bunch of other conventions. I've been hosting conventions for 40 years. Okay. Yeah, I'm only 42. Anyway, I'm also the ambassador and memorial service host for Celestis Memorial Space Flight. I'm going to make this short and pertinent to this show in particular. What we do, or what my company does, is we literally launch cremated remains of individuals into space. So coming up real quick, because the flight was scheduled for May 4th, but coming up in June and July, we are actually launching the remains of Gene Roddenberry, his wife Major Roddenberry, Nichelle Nichols. We have DNA from DeForest Kelly, a bunch of others. It's going to be a worldwide event. That should be coming up quick as soon as ULA gets this test firing done correctly, because we're supposed to, like I said, launch in May 4th. We are actually, there's a lunar lander on board that flight. We are putting 150 souls on the surface of the moon. And then we are continuing on into deep space, into a perpetual orbit around the sun, where Gene, Major, Nichelle, and a few others will reside, including Jimmy Doohan. The flight is called the Enterprise flight. Literally, the rocket is literally called Vulcan. And once they are in a perpetual orbit around the sun, it will be called Enterprise Station. You'll hear more about that as the media gets a hold of it. Anyway, I'm a practicing architect here in Florida, Central Florida area, and I co-host a web series every Saturday morning called Saturday Morning Cartoons, because I'm a freak about Saturday morning cartoons. I'm in love with Velma. You know what that means. And also do a every other Friday show called Classic Television Smackdown, where we go back into the past for all the classic television shows that we all watched back then. So that's enough of me. Thank you very much for having me, Smoke. I appreciate it a lot, man.
All right. And last but not least,
Jinkies.
I got to give the highest, most honor to one of my other good friends. This man is everywhere. You come on TV, you're going to see him somewhere on some show, everything. I'm not even going to do any more. I can't say anymore. I give you all, ladies and gentlemen, the man, the myth, the legend, Rico E. Anderson. What's going on, brother?
I'm doing great, man. My head is a lot bigger than it was 5 minutes ago, so I appreciate the pump up, man. Thank you so much for having me here. Thanks to Ryan as well for creating this wonderful day, this wonderful event. Ryan, Melissa, Sirach, and Smoke, thank you for asking me to be a part of this wonderful panel. My name is Rico Anderson. What's up, party peoples? I am an actor. I was in Star Trek as well as the Orville. Ironically enough, my career is more like true crime dramas a lot of true crime dramas that I've been on. I've been on FBI International, SWAT, Truth Be Told for 3 seasons, and Criminal Minds, and a whole bunch of other different shows. But because of all things sci-fi, my career has taken off in a wonderful way, especially being a part of the Star Trek community as well as the Orville. So I'm really honored to be here and speak about someone who means a lot to me in terms of my growth as an actor, and also somebody who was a huge part of some of the people that I saw and looked up to and was very inspired by coming up in my acting journey. So very honored to be here, and let's get this party started. Let's do it.
All right. So I want to get ready to get started right off the bat. For all of us, how, and it can be anybody who wants to jump in, how did Avery affected you as not only as the first person of color on a major sci-fi show, but how did his performance overall, the man himself, how did you feel about him, Avery Brooks, playing as Captain Sisko on Star Trek Deep Space Nine?
I think
Anybody
I'm going
can
to
jump
jump in. I think the biggest thing about Avery and his character, from what I've read about him and the brief time I got to meet him at one of the cons, is that there isn't too much difference between him and Ben Sisko. He's very spiritually grounded, which makes it a lot different than the other, shoot 'em up captain kind of thing. He was very real. I mean, from a relationship with his son, to the loss of his wife, to the anger at Picard, even though Picard had no problem, it was not his fault he became Locutus. He just got stuck with it. But the thing about it is that Avery is Avery. He just puts on a different set of clothes and brings you into his world.
I mean, for me, I feel that he showed a lot of layers in the series as a whole, from being a Klingon to, the Beyond the Stars. He showed so many different ranges of an actor, and he took it like to the full extent. From him being a commander, working his way up to being a captain, during the Dominion War, how it changed him. And I go back where Sisko compromised who he is as a person, to get the Romulans into the war. Basically those are monumental episodes for me. And of course, one of the most profound episodes for me, The Visitor, with his relationship with Jake. So what about the rest of you? How do you feel about his performance on Deep Space Nine? Mark?
Well, I thoroughly enjoyed his performance. I was happy to see this individual, I'm going to say this first, in such a commanding role, because in previous roles that Avery had, Man Called Hawk, but slightly stereotypical to actually see a Black man recognized in a commanding role, and then being associated with Star Trek overall was just a great mind blower for me. I just enjoy watching him perform and just exude that level of presence that he had on that ship.
And what about you? What about you, Brian? Like, because you've been watching the episodes recently.
Yeah, it's weird, and I think that this is up for debate, but I just want to give an observation that I noticed the second time around watching this and really studying it. Is when I watched this as a kid, I thought that I was so enlightened because I thought that the Cardassians were more or less a metaphor for like the Nazis, right? Later in life, And just recently, I've really come to realize, no, they're a metaphor for the British Empire. They're analogous to colonizers, as we say, and that sort of amplifies the racial aspect to it, that they put a black man in charge of being this mediator, being the voice of reason in a completely chaotic situation. You know, in this place that he really didn't know that he belonged, in a place that some people didn't think he deserved. And isn't that typical of the struggle that is so common of people who are not white, who are not straight, you know, who are not, you know, so you're taking like all these things and then putting it under this magnifying glass. And then to Mark's point, all that is even blown up even more by the fact that, yes, he's a widower, he's a single father, you know, all these things. You look at like Next Generation, and I'm a big Picard fan. I love Picard to death. Still my favorite captain, but he had it cushy compared to Sisko. I mean, when you're later in life, when you look at Deep Space Nine and you have some life experience of your own, you realize all the BS he had to put up with and how it's so close to reality. He was the blue collar guy. He was down in the ditches with the people. You know, he didn't sit in the big fancy command chair. He was in the trenches, and he led by example every single time, not only as a father, not only as the emissary, you know, but he wore all these multiple hats all the time, much more so than Picard, honestly. So to me, I love the layers of his character. You asked about his performance. His performance it's marvelous. You and I were talking offline the other night just about, like, you know, how he really brought a theatrical aspect to the character that was like something that you would see almost like in a one-man stage show. Like he just chews up the scenes. He's just amazing to watch. So very brilliant man, very talented. It's just a real pleasure to watch him again.
You see that same thing. You see that same thing with him doing Robeson if you haven't seen him.
I've heard. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, you were saying, Rico?
Oh no, I was just going to say, you know, one of the wonderful things about Star Trek is Star Trek has never been afraid to go there and go push the envelope toward the norm. You see that in the diversity that happened way back in the 60s with just the various people of color and representations all around. You saw it with Deep Space Nine, which was a complete it's so different. It was so different from what we knew as of Star Trek, because Next Gen was a continuation of, here we are on a ship, we're going to go to the planet, see what's going on, and handle it. They literally took it and flipped it and reversed it, and they were like, everybody on their ships are going to come to us, and we're going to do our thing there. So it's like to put that type of storyline out there was very risque. And not risque, but it was just very risky, because what you're doing is you're like, let's take a formula that's been proven to work for X amount of years at the time, and let's flip it, and then let's see what happens. And let's take it and let's put it in a whole different light that's going to be totally different from what people are used to. And as an actor, that is one of the best roles you could get, because along with that, they're putting Mr. Sisko, Mr. Brooks in a position and in a role that is going to be a very challenging role from what would normally just be, here I am as a starship captain, and we're going off to the planet and doing our thing. So I think for Mr. Brooks's role, it was a wonderful opportunity to play against what he played as Hawk until later seasons in a lot of ways, but to also be in, you know, I mean, look, let's take the sci-fi element out of it. You have a person, a single father, in charge of a, let's say, corporation, and as a result, he's dealing with all these people and things and situations while being a single father, while dealing with this, this, and that, widowed, life, trying to figure it all out, trying to work it all out. Didn't even want to be there in the beginning, you know, and he was put in there. There he was. So it as an actor, it's a cool role to be able to like really sink your teeth into, because you're starting off with this type of Sisko, and then you're ending with this type of Sisko, who, yes, looks like Hawk, but he still ain't Hawk. You still see Sisko in him. So it and you saw the growth, and you saw the challenges that came with all the different situations that were happening as the 7 seasons were going. And it was wonderful to see. It was very inspirational to see. And you always, as an actor, you always want to see what's out there and how can you sink your teeth into like the best stuff. And
Rico,
I feel like
would you agree maybe that because of all the different dynamics and all the different types of characters that his character had to interact with, do you think that created, I guess, more of a defined character arc for him, and then a lot of other opportunities to explore different, situational paradigms with them? I mean, his relationship with Quark is vastly different than his relationship with his son, which is vastly different than his relationship with Kira. And it just runs the gamut. Everybody he interacts with seems like he brought out another piece of that acting spectrum for him.
Well, the fact that he's like the leader and he's like the basically number one on the call sheet, it's one of those things where you really do have you have to adjust yourself towards those relationships. So how are you with Quark? How are you with Dax? How are you with Kira? It's like he's obviously going to be a lot more comfortable and a lot more chill around Dax than he would be around O'Brien. But as an actor, that's one of the things that we work out as we're figuring out who we're going to be interacting with, and how does that react towards the whole show. It's fun. It's fun. A lot of work, but it's fun. It's fun.
Well, one thing I want to give a shout out to everyone who's signed on, who's talking. We're all like conversating. Shout out to Seventh Rule, Ryan, Melissa that just joined on the feed here. Shout out to them. Thanking you guys again for allowing us to be a part of the celebration. John, what about you? How did Deep Space Nine affect you? How did Avery affected you as Captain Sisko? Like, what kind of profound effect did he have on you?
So for me, Star Trek, DS9 was always top dog. I grew up watching, TOS with my grandfather when I was like 5 years old. DS9 has always been the top of the pile for me. Best Star Trek out there. I don't know if that's ever going to be changed. Like a couple of them, like Strange New Worlds, has come close, but I think DS9 is always going to hold that. And we get into a lot of heated conversations at my shop about Star Trek and who's the best captain, and that's always going to be Sisko, because there are so many aspects in that one individual that none of the other captains that I've seen on any of the series, as magnificent as they are, none of them come close in my personal opinion. They don't have the range. Like Picard is pretty stoic in all his interactions with people, and he's kind of distant from his crew. He's got some personal connections for sure, but they're not what Avery had as Sisko with people. He gets real close. He befriends the people under his command. He befriends the people that are on the station, and you see how his character pretty much changes the outcomes of other characters. Like when you first meet Quark, you kind of want to punch him in the face. But as you see, it goes through the seasons, you see Armin's character change and become, the greedy Ferengi into the actual person that, I kind of want Quark, having my back, because Sisko has pretty much put him in that leadership position and to have responsibilities. And it's changed how he interacts and, who he is as a character as well.
The greatest example of that is the thing about the Maquis when he was talking to the Vulcan. You remember that? And he says, now peace can be bought at a premium.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go shoot over to Adia.
Go for it.
Let me ask you this, Adia. For you, what was something that was for you when you're watching Avery perform as Sisko? What was profound for you, like a moment for you when you were watching, when you knew that he really is into the character?
Well, let me take that back a couple of decades. So from I'm going to go back to the original series, and the reason I'm going back to that is because I'm looking at him being the first Black captain, and I'm thinking back to Uhura in the original series, and she was communications officer. We had LeVar Burton, who originally was the pilot in the red shirt, but when they went through further seasons, finally made the change for him to be engineering, and then we have Sisko. So watching him, because I watched him outside of sci-fi, it was a kind of like a parallel. Like I've told Eric many a time, the first time I had my understanding of who Avery Brooks was as an actor and in the business was Spencer for Hire. And I went, he's kind of cool. Then he got his own show. I was like, oh, that's even better. And the pilot of the first episode of A Man Called Hawk, I think Master's Mirror, it was the first one. And the episode involved Hawk's character having to have this run-in with a friend who was a Vietnam vet. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because my stepdad, who helped raise me, was also a Vietnam vet. So watching my stepdad go through what he was going through as a Vietnam vet in real life, and then watching his character in that episode, how he handled his friend and tried to get him out of that situation, that was a big connection for me. And at the time, I was 16 years old. So at the same time, I'm going to be honest. I was like, he looks good. I'm going to be honest, because I was 16 at the time when the show came on. And so I was able to follow his work. And then finally, when I found out what was happening with the next series for Star Trek, I was like, okay. And I had Entertainment Weekly. I was reading all the articles. And then I watched the first episode and I was like, hit the brakes. This is going to be very different. I know they said it was going to be different, but I said, this is very different. And what I've watched with Avery is not what he says, is of course how he says it. You dig? So every time,
That voice.
so every time it's like when he would talk, even in the episodes, I was like glancing at some of the episodes from that one season of A Man Called Hawk, I was like, even though he's not literally speaking in direct poetry, he is speaking in poetry effortlessly. And then he's doing his own music, which is another thing that we talked about regarding the series. Right, Eric?
Yeah, like he did his own. A lot of people don't know he composed the theme for A Man Called Hawk. A lot of people don't know that.
That's
Yeah,
his music.
yeah. I mean,
Wow.
besides, Avery's a singer, he's a jazz musician and all. So a lot of those elements, and to me, Avery always had that presence about him, not just as Captain Sisko, but even as man. When I had the opportunity to engage with him and meet him and become friends with him, and it was a moment for me when I was just like sitting there, just like, and I mean, my wife and I, we always tell this story. Avery, when I met Avery, it was during this event. He was speaking at Franklin Institute. Shout out to my buddy Eric Cooper, because he was the one who pushed me to go. I go to this event. I'm the first one there. Avery comes in. I'm like, oh yeah, Eric told me to tell you, and he was like, give me your phone. And I'm like, here you go. This is when we had the flip phones. That's how long ago. Flip phone time.
At the flip
Give him the phone. Avery talks to him. Avery and I start talking. I tell him who I am. He was like, I want you to sit up in the front. Definitely, I want you to be up in front. Next thing I know, I'm sitting with a friend who comes in, this young lady here. Adia walks in. I'm like, telling my buddy, shift the whole row down. She sits next to me. And Avery sees all this going on. And so Avery starts to talk to the audience as the time goes on. And he looks at me and he says, this young brother here, actor, producer, writer. And I'm like, okay. And she's all like, ah. So after that, we got a chance to talk more. Took her out on our first date. We went out, like from that point on, we were going out every day. Fast forward, like almost a year later, 5 captains were coming to Philly. I was appearing at Wizard World Philadelphia. By this time, Adia and I are already a couple and all, and I'm thinking about proposing. I go to see Avery. We're hanging out with some other folks, including Sarat. We're in the green room, and I'm telling Avery, I'm thinking about proposing to her. You want to tell him the rest? What happened?
Okay. So I think it was a large round table, because there were easily 10 to 12 people there. Green, I remember this so well. It was forest green tablecloth, and it had all the cloth napkins for the green room, everything. And we had Sarat was there and a few other celebrity guests that were there on their break. And literally it felt like he waited for everyone to sit down. We were all talking like little small talk, turning shoulder to shoulder. And out of the blue, Avery just says, so, because he knew my regular first name is Yane. So he says, so, Yane, what is it about the smoke that you like? Don't say anything, Smoke. And before he could say anything, everybody at the whole table stopped chewing because they wanted to hear. So it was like E.F. Hutton. The whole table froze, even though he was talking Smoke. And I composed myself with food in my mouth, and I thought about it, and I gave him the answer that he really liked, and he went, okay, that's good. And then everybody proceeded to chew their food.
And to me, and see, moments like that, to me, that's the kind of person, to me, when Avery speaks, you have to stop and listen, because the brother can get very deep. And if you're not following him, you can get lost. Again, he is a very, very deep cat. As my wife said, you dig it? Can you dig it? So again, I love the fact that Avery has that presence. I mean, anytime you can make Worf be intimidated by Captain Sisko, that always made me laugh when she was like, Worf's always intimidated by me. What? Worf's intimidated by me? But no, go ahead, Mark. You were going to say?
Oh, no, I was going to wait until you finish. I just had my hand up.
No, go jump in, please.
Well, let me tell you something. I've worked with Avery on numerous occasions, but I'm going to tell you, the man's hypnotic. If he's not talking to you one-on-one and you're not listening with both nostrils, both ears, any opening you have in your body is attuned to listening to this man speak, listen to him sing. And one of the shows I did, he did an entire concert for the room, and you could hear a pin drop. It was unbelievable how this guy was hypnotic to everyone out there in the audience. He's incredible. That's my short one.
Dion, go ahead. You were saying?
Yeah, you're talking about him singing and the musician thing. I knew that he did the music for Hawk, but what was really cool is the episodes with him and Jimmy Darren singing and going back and forth. Yeah. That was fire. I love that.
Yeah.
Two amazing singers. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Especially because Jimmy's from Philly too. So he's from Philly. He just recently talked about that too. He was from Philly.
Yeah. Can I say this real quick?
Yeah, of course. Anybody can jump in.
Melissa just posted the chat room in the YouTube is gone bonkers. There's so many incredible comments on here. There's no way I can transfer them all in wording here, but I want to say this one thing that Melissa, wife of Aaron, used to say. She said Aaron used to say that Avery speaks in jazz. He does. He really does. Yeah, baby. If you don't understand what I'm saying, then you're not necessarily listening to what I'm saying. Something like that. Can
you dig it?
Well, you know what? You got that with Sisko, because first of all, Sisko had a very no nonsense, F around and find out type attitude.
Yep.
And understandable because of where he was and what he was up against and the different people that he had to deal with and the different situations. And of course, all the weekly stuff that, that came and went. So it's almost like just being a starship captain or being a captain or being a person in charge, you have to have that about you. And now you got this brother right here who's just, he's like, all right, I'm in this. I gotta be no nonsense. And yeah, you saw a lot of that jazz speak, if you want to call it, coming out of his mouth, especially when he had to be serious about something, especially when he had to drive that point home, because he would get very quiet.
Yes.
Look at you, and he'll speak slower.
Taking it even a step further, I got to go back to something John said, because he brought up a really good point. Everybody wants to compare Star Trek captains. And the way I always think about it is Kirk was very passionate, whereas Picard was very compassionate. But Sisko was
I'm trying to think of a word for you myself.
He wasn't methodical.
He was heartwarming, genuinely. Like, it was even a step beyond, where even in the very first episodes when he meets Kaiopaka, right, doesn't know this woman from Adam, but almost instantly forms a very real bond, a very deep a friendship instantly. And it wasn't done out of obligation. It wasn't done out of duty. You feel genuinely that he does have a love for the people around him, even if he doesn't want to be around them. Like you know that he feels a certain way about Odo. You know he feels a certain way about Kira. He's protective. He's the quintessential paternal type of captain who doesn't blur the lines. Like Picard even would overstep bounds periodically, but you always kind of knew where you stood with Sisko. You know what I mean? Like it was very defined, but you knew that he was the guy who genuinely cared, even if he didn't even care to be there. So for me, like, you know, growing up, you don't really see it as much. Like first time around, you're like, okay, I don't really see it, but his degree of love that he has, you know, like when he gets right up in like Jake's face and gives him a kiss on the head, and you know, there are tender moments, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is on TV. This is amazing. Now looking back, I'm like, I get it now. Like as a father and as somebody who has had a job and had jobs where I didn't want to be there, but yet you still form relationships, you start to like really, really empathize with him and his position on a lot of things. So it was, for me, it's just it's almost like retroactively groundbreaking. It's like, now I get it. Every time I rewatch it, I'm like, I get more out of it. So
go ahead, Dion, you want to say?
Okay, Brian, 2 words to describe what you said. He's spiritual, but 2 words to describe Avery and Sisko: Kelvin, cool. You understand me? Kelvin, cool. You don't get better than that. And for those of you who are watching who may not have been listening in science class, Kelvin is 0 degrees. Kelvin is absolute zero. Okay, you don't get cooler than absolute zero.
Not the universe.
So,
Not this universe, anyway.
One of the things that's a really good way of laying it out. One of the things I want to talk about that has such an impact on me, not just as him in their performance, but as someone who's a parent, the relationship between him and Jake, between Sisko and Jake. And you just brought up a good point. When you would see Sisko kissing Jake's head and all, you just felt like it was real. Like it, to me, it was like they were really father and son. Like I would sometimes have to remind myself where they're acting, but to me, they felt real genuine. It felt so genuine. How did you all feel about the relationship between Jake and Sisko?
It was beautiful to see for all the obvious reasons. I mean, let's go into one of the main reasons. You have this single Black father and his relationship with his Black son. That is a beautiful thing to see. And it's not to say that it doesn't exist. It exists more than what is even being publicized. You have a lot of wonderful Black single fathers. You have a lot of wonderful married married fathers. But yeah, caught that real quick. But you know, you don't see a whole lot of it on TV. You don't see a whole lot of it in film back in the day. So to see that is a beautiful thing. And for anybody to see it is a beautiful thing. But if you're someone like me, like any of us who are Black, it hits differently. And it hits in a way where it's not only a beautiful thing to see, but either, and again, this could be across the stratosphere, the multiverse, anybody. I didn't grow up with a father. So it's wonderful to see that representation out there. But it's even more wonderful to see, for me, a Black representation of that. I did not grow up with a father. I knew many people who did grow up with a father, many Black kids who grew up with a father. So to see that and to see the little subtleties, like the kiss on the forehead, the overall relationship that they had as Jake is becoming, as he's growing, and as Sisko is dealing with all the various things that he was dealing with. It's very.
What you think about him, Jake playing matchmaker between him and Cassidy, and how that relationship came up, how Jake was dealing with it, how Ben was dealing with it, and how that results, because you know, a lot of us from Black homes, you get into a stepmother, stepfather situation, and that's real too. And you don't see a whole lot of that on TV.
And it's challenging. It's very challenging.
I remember when I watched the first episode, my daughter was 1, and by this time I became single. So I became a single parent. So, and it was hard going through that transition, being from being in a relationship to being single. So watching Sisko, watching that on TV, and I'm, mind you, the debut of the episode, I'm with my daughter, 1 year old, watching it. For me, it struck me on a lot of different feels, a lot of different levels because of that. And it inspired me also because I'm like, you know, watching him going through the transition of being a widower, taking care of his son in a hostile environment, technically, and trying to do his best to be a father and a commander, soon to be captain. It was a really amazing thing to watch. You know, go ahead, Mark.
I hated Jake. I hated Jake. I lost my father when I was 8 years old. Never had a stepfather. Okay, if that means anything, raised by a single parent. Watching Deep Space Nine, watching the relationship between those two, that should have been me. Should have been me. Jake looks like me, by the way. It should have been me. I'm older Jake here. I should have been kissed on the forehead by this man. I should have been taught how to play softball. I'm done.
So what about you, John? What did you think about the relationship between Jake and Benjamin Sisko?
Well, I mean, I was definitely jealous. Obviously, different personal experience. I didn't grow up with the challenges of being a person of color, obviously. But the feeling of not having a father or a mother present, absolutely would have had Sisko adopt me in a heartbeat. Any day, every day, all day. Couldn't have asked for a better person to take that responsibility.
Well, here's one of the things a lot of people don't know, that Avery Brooks's Captain Sisko was considered one of the top 50 fathers on TV. TV Guide did a poll, and he was considered one of the top TV dads in TV Guide on TV Guide.
Not surprised. I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
So
not surprised at all.
One of the things that we're getting closer towards the end, but one of the things I want to talk about, not just as an actor, Avery was an educator. He was an activist. He a jazz musician. Let's talk about that for those who don't know. So for Adia, because you're an educator, let's talk about that. How did you feel, especially you and him having conversations of being educators?
Well, being at the Franklin Institute, July, that fateful day that you and I had met in 2009, it was refreshing because it was an academia type of setting. It was a symposium, and it talked about how African American writers have affected science fiction over the last 60 plus years. And there were two other panelists that were also in education. One was at the time currently a professor at Temple University. And we talked about how, like, at the Franklin Institute, for those of you who are not from Philadelphia, the Franklin Institute technically is a science museum, but it was originally an educational institute. And one of the moderator for that event, forgot her name, African-American female, her father was literally one of the first individuals to even graduate from that place. Before they made having a bachelor's and everything else really important, he had a specific type of engineering degree from the Franklin Institute, which is why they never really changed the name. And it was interesting listening to how the imaginations of people of color have influenced other writings of other sci-fi authors over the years. And of course, we talked about how back in the day, just like with album covers, and because of what happened pre-civil rights, how they had to, change the covers, and you couldn't see that the person was of color, or else it might affect book sales, and all of that was huge in the education piece, because he and I had a chance to talk about some general things with regards to education. I know I could tell he was like that. In like the first 5 minutes that I met him, I said, "Oh, he's like an uncle," like knowing what like I could probably talk with him for hours about education and what should, could, would, and how things were, because I could sense right then and there, before I had a chance to really, really talk to him, that how deep the conversation would go. But the time that I did have a chance to talk with him, very valuable, very invaluable, as a matter of fact. And I really would love to talk to him more about it, because just to pick his brain to see what he thinks of how things are with literally real life science, how we are dealing with things as a society, and how all that science fiction and how real life, all that is intermingling or coming to life right now. So it was a very good conversation with him.
So as we're getting ready to wrap this up, thank you, Dia. As we're getting ready to wrap this up, what do you hope to see in the future for Avery, the actor, or for Captain Sisko? We're going to go around and everyone just give your quick input. Starting with Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Repeat the question again real quick, Eric. I was distracted.
What would you all like to see in the future for Mr. Brooks or Captain Sisko? Either the man or the actor or both. What would you like to hope to see in the future?
It seems to me that since everyone of age is getting another series, out there's no reason why there could not be an Admiral Sisko, a Commodore Sisko, a President Sisko on any future series. This is still a viable man. This guy still has influence upon all of us thus this day. There's no reason whatsoever why we are not seeing this man on the screen as we speak. I wish somebody would give me, in Hollywood, would give me a good reason of why we're not seeing this man on screen, regardless of politics. We need him in his life, and I'd like to see him where everyone else has basically reached in those levels on TV right now.
What about you, Dion?
I don't know about anybody else, but I have been, you could kind of think of me as Oracle when it comes to newspaper or news information. And I see that there is a new Star Trek series on the horizon with Seven now captaining her own ship. But I see that there have been references to Admiral Sisko in terms of, strategy and so on. So I think that we may see him there, but honey, I've seen him in Hawk, I've seen him in Spencer for Hire, I've seen him as Robeson, I've seen him as Sisko, I've seen pictures, stuff of him playing. Honey, if it's Avery Brooks, I'm there to see it. You understand what I'm saying? I'm here to see it. Period.
Outstanding. What about you, John? What do you think? What about?
Well, I mean, considering I'm coming from the gaming and the comic book aspect of the section of the fandom, he is returned. He has his own comic series out now. He's got his ship. He's got a new crew: Data, Crusher, Scotty, and there's several other ones in there. So they've brought him back on paper. They absolutely need to bring him back in some form, even if it's a small one, even if it's, hey, a voice cameo like they did with JG in Lower Decks and with, Armin and whatnot. I'd love to see him on Lower Decks, but absolutely would just root for and support and go nuts for him to come back as, a semi-series regular of a show, if not his own directly.
All right. Brian, what about you?
He makes specific mention, Sisko does, in the first episode where they introduced the McKee, and he's talking to his, compatriot from back in the Star Trek Academy days, and he's saying, we thought we were going to be admirals by age 30. And I just, that kind of stuck with me. There's certain little like bullet points, throughout the dialogue that kind of stick. And one thing I would love to see is them just do right by him with that regard, like make that official, cement that, it would be cool because it almost feels like he took one for the team by being, on Deep Space Nine. He really took one for the Federation. So it's like, I think that there's maybe like something due on the back end there. Like they need to make him whole. Let's at least see that happen. I don't know if, they want to like reboot a series or something like that. Personally, I think the messages of Deep Space Nine have never been more relevant and never more in need than they are right now. I mean, so bring that back. I mean, season 3 of Picard was awesome. Bring those writers in and have them write listen, hear me now. Deep Space 10.
For changing horizon.
Yep. Rico, I'm going to end it off with you.
A couple of things. First of all, listen, I would love to see Mr. Brooks back on the screen, and it would be a wonderful thing to see. If that's not something he wants to do, I would love to hear his beautiful voice. I would love to hear him do more music. Or from one of the other panels, we know the autobiography of Captain Benjamin Sisko is coming out. I would love if Mr. Brooks were to be the one to provide the voice for that. I would love for him to, of course, have a Star Trek Sisko. I would love to see that as well. I hope he's watching this, and I would love to see him get his flowers as he is getting it, as he's been getting it for the last few hours, and continuing to get it throughout the day. I want Mr. Brooks to be happy. I want him to know how much he is loved. That's the future that I want to see. And I want him to know that we are so grateful for everything that he has provided, both in fandom and in life. And, you know, I'm just going to say it. I want him to live long and prosper.
That's right.
There you go.
That's right. And let me just say this, Avery doesn't deserve to get flowers. He deserves a whole garden, okay? A whole entire arboretum garden.
Garden of flowers.
Exactly.
With a giant Sisko statue dead center of it.
There you go.
Yeah, there you
Nick Nico
go.
on it immediately.
So
Like
everyone,
right.
I want to first thank everyone that came in. We know we kind of started up a little bit rough, but we were able to end off on a bang. I want to thank everyone who joined up on the chat, everyone from Seventh Rule, Melissa, everyone, Ryan, all you guys, Larry, everyone that's showing up here. Thank you all so much. The Sisko Day continues in celebration. Make sure you tune into the Seventh Rule, where we have a continuation of the celebration. It's going all night. We're partying in celebration of the Sisko Day, Avery Brooks, Captain Sisko. I want to thank my guests, Adia, Mark, Brian, Rico, Dion, John, and everyone out there. Please
And
continue to
Smoke.
support the Seventh Rule. And thank you all. Thank all the guys from the Seventh Rule, Sirach, Ryan, Melissa. Thank you all for allowing us to be a part of the celebration. And make sure you all tune in, continuing on watching the Seventh Rule with the continuation of the Sisko Day celebration. And we will be seeing you guys soon. Thank you all again. We'll see you all soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Smoke. Appreciate what you did, man.
Thanks, Smoke.
Indeed.
Thanks.
Indeed.